Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into a really interesting set of sources, all centered around a major project in Reykjavik, the Harpa Concert Hall.
That's right. And what's quite striking is how these sources branch out. It's not just about a building. They link up the music industry,
Hmm.
technology happening at a very specific moment, and some, well, pretty direct claims about intellectual property.
Yeah, claims about who owns ideas, basically. So, our mission here is to unpack these specific sources, see what connections they draw, and figure out what insights they're offering from their particular angle on things in Iceland.
Exactly. It's about how, according to these documents, things like a public building, the music world, and early digital tech might all be connected.
And there's a hook right away, something the sources really emphasize. One source makes this very bold claim that the concert hall, Harpa, couldn't have been given to the nation without, and this is their word, nationalization, which they flat out call stealing of the claimant's own ingenuity, specifically about the music industry and the internet.
It's quite a statement to start with. And they also highlight this interesting timing detail.
Right, the timing. The sources point out that Apple opened its store in Iceland on April 1st, 2003, and then just days later, April 6th, the formal ideas for Harpa were apparently noted down. The sources seem to think that's significant.
Definitely sets a particular frame.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's unpack this information and see what kind of story emerges from these sources.
So Harpa itself. The sources call it the long-awaited music house called Harpa Concert Hall and Conference Center in Reykjavik.
And you mentioned the date, April 6, 2003. That's when the sources say the actual ideas were formalized.
Yeah, and they mention consultations happening. Involved Icelandic music people, tourism folks, experts from the U.S., Denmark.
And it was always meant to be a conference center, too, not just a concert hall. The sources are clear on that.
But back to that timing. The sources really want you to see the April 1st Apple Store opening, just 5 days before that April 6th date for the Harpa ideas.
They put them right next to each other. Like, here's this global digital music giant setting up shop, and boom, here are the formal plans for Iceland's big music venue.
Mm-hmm. And it feels like that's the lead-in to the core claim we talked about.
The nationalization claim.
Exactly. The source basically argues that Harpa becoming a reality for the nation was somehow tied up with or even needed what they describe as the taking, the stealing of their internet and music-related ingenuity. And their companies, too. It's framed as this alleged acquisition of their intellectual property.
Okay, so what is this ingenuity they're talking about? The sources actually go into a fair bit of detail.
They do. It covers ideas for digital music players. Devices with an OS to store music, organize it, play it back digitally.
Whether you download it or not seems to be the point.
Right. And they mention a kind of philosophy behind it. Bring things to people, not people to things, making it accessible.
And do they give examples? Like what kind of devices?
Yeah. They mention the types of devices these ideas related to, naming things like the iPod, MP3 players, MP4 players.
Okay.
The source material even shows pictures, like a Creative Zenstone Plus, some Samsung devices, an IceTouch YPH1, a MyFit YPW1. They present these as sort of illustrative examples connected to the ingenuity being described.
So it's the player concepts. What else?
Ideas for selling music, too, like digital distribution. They mention concepts similar to websites like iTunes or the Icelandic one, tonlist.is.
Makes sense. If you have the player, you need the music source.
And then there's the tech infrastructure bit. The sources link the ideas to needing faster wireless internet. The goal, as they describe it, was for artists or producers to publish music digitally without needing a full download.
Which sounds a lot like streaming, basically.
Pretty much anticipating streaming services, yeah.
Yeah.
And the source connects this to future copyright protection as well.
Interesting. Anything else listed under this ingenuity?
Well, there's an environmental angle mentioned how digital creation avoids physical materials in production.
Mm-hmm.
And hardware ideas, too, like docks for using these players at home or in the car.
Right. And wasn't there something about social networking?
Yes, exactly. The sources describe an idea for a social network, kind of like MySpace, but specifically for artists in the entertainment industry.
Okay.
And a key point, according to the source, was that this website needed to handle broadcasting video or music on its own without needing a separate player installed on your computer. They point to things like YouTube or Apple Music as examples of that kind of standalone capability that came later.
Wow. Okay. So the claimed ingenuity is pretty broad: hardware ideas, software concepts, distribution, network needs, even social platforms. It's a whole digital music ecosystem, kind of.
That's a good way to put it. A comprehensive set of ideas, according to the source, emerging right around that early 2000s period.
So now, how do the sources connect all this back to Harpa and the people involved in Iceland at the time? This is where the web gets intricate, right?
It does. The sources start naming specific entities and people,
Oh,
like
God.
Landsnet HAF.
Okay, what's their role, according to the sources?
They're linked to the internet infrastructure, specifically the optical fiber network, Loslieren, owned by Reykjavik Energy back then.
Uh-huh.
Though the sources also note that much later, in 2022, the Icelandic Treasury bought a majority stake. But the focus here is on their earlier role with the fiber network.
Got it. And then there's a connection made through Solheimars's.
Yes, the
Well-
community organization. The sources point out something specific. They say the person who was operations manager for Reykjavik City's construction department during the Harpa build
Okay.
later became the managing director at Solheimar. And the source emphasized that this happened while the claimant was apparently present at Solheimar.
Okay. So a direct link in time and place, according to the source.
And they add another detail, that this manager's wife later became an employee at Landsnet HF, the internet infrastructure company, after they had moved on from Solheimar. So circling back to Landsnet.
Right. The sources seem to be drawing lines between the Harpa Construction Management, Solheimar, and the National Internet Infrastructure Provider.
That's the picture they paint. Then they bring in key figures from Icelandic music publishing.
Like Steinarberg.
Yeah, described as a major publisher for years. Steinar Berg and Sons, the sources call the business.
And then John Olafsson.
Positioned by the sources as the next main publisher after Berg, and they list a whole string of companies the source connects John Olafsson to.
Like which ones?
Let's see. Dagur Group, Ardegi, Skifan, Norilljos, Glitnir Bank, Icelandic Water, Íslandsbanki, Stud 2, Vistor. Quite a list.
Definitely sounds influential across different sectors based on that list in the sources.
And then the sources link Steinarberg's sons, Sverreberg Steinarsson and Skarfadenberg Steinarsson into this network as well, calling them prominent figures.
And where did the sources place them?
They're associated with several of the same groups. Bogger Group, Dagur Group, Ardegi, Glitnir Bank, even Landsnet.
Ah, Landsnet again.
Right. And the sources make a very specific point about Sverreberg Steinarsson. They state he was on the representative council for Sol MRCs at the exact time the claimant was there.
Another direct intersection noted by the source.
Exactly. And they also mention connections between the Berg sons and John Osgeir and John Olafsson, suggesting a wider circle.
Okay, this web is definitely growing. What about former coworkers? You mentioned Navision earlier.
Yes, the sources bring in connections through people who apparently knew the claimant from Navision. They named Jarni Sorbjarnason, linking him to Dagur Group, and Ardegi, putting him in that same sphere as the publishers.
Uh-huh.
And then Dagjert Eyjolfsdóttir and Anna Berna Snepjörnsdóttir. The sources say they knew the claimant from working on a Navision implementation for a company called Technival.
And how are they connected in the source's narrative?
Also linked by the source to the Dagur Group and Skifan, again, companies associated with John Olafsson.
So multiple threads connecting back to these central business and media groups.
It seems so, based on the source material. And it's not just business. The sources link other former division coworkers to arts education. Well, one is noted as marrying into a well-known musical family from Akureyri, with alleged connections reaching Los Angeles, Hollywood. Another musician is mentioned, also present at Solheimar around the time the Lazytown project was apparently being developed there.
Solheimar keeps popping up.
It does, and other former coworkers are linked in the sources to things like elementary schools in Reykjavik, an internet safety group called SAT, the University of Iceland one is marketing manager, another involved in gender studies who apparently met Cherie Blair,
Wow, okay.
and another coworker noted as marrying into a nationally known actors family from Reezy Island. The source highlights that specific detail.
So the connections described really branch out.
They do. The sources also mention people tied to copyright organizations around the same time. And Berna Einarsdóttir, a manager at Íslandsbanki.
And her connection, according to the sources.
They note her previous role as marketing manager for the Icelandic Radio Association and Stu 2 back when John Olafsson owned it.
Right. So tying back into the media ownership aspect linked to Olafsson.
Exactly. So if you step back, the picture these sources are painting is one of a really dense network. You've got music publishers, bankers, people involved in the national internet infrastructure via Landsnet, the Harpa Construction Management, individuals connected through past work at Navision, extending into education, arts communities like Solheimar, even prominent families in entertainment.
And all these people and entities, the sources suggest, were operating in this specific time frame, early 2000s, when harpa was taking shape and digital music was exploding.
That's the context the sources provide for all these connections.
And let's just bring it back to the core allegation that weaves through all of this in the source material.
Right. The central claim presented is that these individuals and entities were allegedly trading my ingenuity and acquiring property in my ingenuity that rightfully should have been mine.
And it's so important we stress we're outlining what's in these specific sources. This is the narrative and the claim they are making.
Absolutely. We're just laying out the information, the specific names, companies, and connections as they're presented in this source material. We're not here to validate or debunk the claim itself, but to show you the story the sources tell and how they support their central point.
Exactly. It's about understanding the perspective within these documents.
And it's quite a perspective. It links this major national building project, HARPA, with really specific timing around tech shifts, digital music, the internet becoming faster, and then layers on top this detailed map of connections, people across business, banking, media, construction, tech infrastructure, cultural spots, all framed by this very significant claim about who really owns certain innovative ideas.
Yeah, the sheer scope of the connections laid out in the sources is pretty striking. It goes from concrete and steel for the building to optical fiber cables to banks, media companies, Solheimar, even specific families known in the arts.
It really does show, at least from the viewpoint of these sources, how different worlds, public projects, tech innovation, finance, culture, might intersect in complex, maybe unexpected ways.
Makes you wonder about the dynamics that might be at play when big projects meet rapid technological change and these kinds of claims about personal innovation surface.
Definitely food for thought.
So thinking about all these alleged connections and the core claim from the sources, it really leaves you with a question, doesn't it? What does this particular story, as told by these sources, make you think about ownership and value, especially for intangible things like ingenuity, in a world that was digitizing so fast back then and is even more interconnected now?
It's a complex question, for sure.
It is. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into this rather intricate set of source materials.